Hello, I'm going to just tell you another snippet from my holidays in Flamborough. And this one is about going to the beach at Selwicks Bay from the farm. The nearest beach to cliff top and bays and things to the farm where we stayed was Selwicks Bay. And so, because that was the nearest, we usually walked up along the road towards the lighthouse. When we got almost to the lighthouse, we walked down a path at the top of the cliffs, down a slope, and then down some steps, and then a bit more path, and then some more steps. And then, when I was very young, it was just cliff down to the bay. So somebody had years ago had put a very thick rope, very thick, like that thick, and knotted it round the last fence post and put knots on it so that people could climb down to the bay rather than risking life and limb by climbing down the cliff, because the cliffs are chalk cliffs and it crumbles very easily, and climbing it really isn't a good idea because it can crumble and you can fall. Now, this was maybe, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 meters worth of cliff by the time we'd got to the rope. So it wasn't like a very, very long rope climb down or back up again. So we used to walk there and then climb down the rope, knot by knot, and then we were on the beach, which was not much sand, a little bit of sand, but mainly pebbles and rocks. And when the tide was out, there were flat layers of rock with lots of rock pools with seaweed and all sorts of creatures living in them, which was fun, walking around looking at all of those. Now, there were a few things. Oh, there were caves as well, and some of the caves you could get to directly from the beach. Some of the caves you could get to from out at sea, but we didn't used to swim out to them because the currents around there were too strong, and we knew all about that. But if the tide was very, very low and still going out, you could walk round on the flat, level, rocky area and explore a bit further, not just in the main bay. When I was very young, there were 2 pillars of chalk in the bay. One was called the Queen Rock and one was called the King Rock. Now, I think when Brian was young, there was still one of them, but I'm pretty sure that nowadays there isn't a single one. I haven't looked this last, I haven't really looked lately, and I can't remember whether there was or wasn't last time I was there. Because I was sort of taking my dog for a walk, not looking for King and Queen rocks standing there. So they got eroded by the sea because the chalk crumbles, and they were just pillars of chalk with a little bit of soil and grass on top. So I'm pretty sure they're not there anymore at all, either of them. So we used to, when the tide was almost fully out, but not quite, we would walk around the flat bit, and you could walk around towards Bempton on the seashore, though, not on the cliff top. You could walk round towards Bempton on these flat rocks, and if you went far enough, which we only did once, and that was when Stan and David were with us, and that was my 2 cousins, my brother and myself, and Stan and David, and we had our swimming gear with us on underneath our top clothes. And we walked round till we came to this pool that Stan and David had told us about. And it was so deep in the middle of this pool. The pool was on an extended sort of area of this flat rock. And when we got to it, you could see that it was shallow at the edges, but in the middle it got deeper. And Stan and David had told us that it was bottomless, which is not possible. But we all determined to see if we could find the bottom. So we went in and swam down and down and down and down and down, holding our breath, of course, until we knew that we had to go back up again or we would start breathing water because we were getting ready to breathe again. You can only hold your breath for so long. It varies from person to person, but it's not a good idea to be swimming underwater, holding your breath longer than you can. So you sort of know how long you can hold your breath before you go in. And we went down there, and none of us could see the bottom. Every time you swam as far down as you could, and then went back up again and breathed and rested, and then went back down again to look again, see if you could get a bit further. But none of us could, and all four of us were good swimmers, my two cousins, my brother and myself. We were used to doing things like that. So, and Stan and David were there ready in case anything happened, because they were quite a bit older than us. And then we walked back again. And walking back, sometimes you walk through caves, sometimes you walk along the flat rocks at the bottom of the cliff. And it was fun, it was interesting, it was like exploring. And it was fun, the four of us with Stan and David, so there were six of us all together. When we went as a family with my parents, my grandparents, with Uncle Harry and Auntie Sadie, and Ian and Daphne and Mandra and myself, we used to go to Selwicks Bay the same way, climbing down the rope. And then later on, there were some wooden steps put on that last bit where the rope was. So we go to Selwicks Bay, get to the beach, and then we walk round the other way on the Bridlington side, or the lighthouse side, or the east side of the bay. And there, I'm not really sure how they knew it was safe, because what we did was clambered up to about head height from the beach. On the cliff side, there was another of these level areas, which was about that wide, sometimes only that wide, but usually, a metre or two wide. And you could walk around that out further out to sea, if you like. And when you got round a little corner where you couldn't be seen from the beach, so most people didn't know it was there, and you couldn't see it from the cliff top, so people didn't know it was there, or from the other side anywhere. The only way you could see it was when you were actually there, because if you were in a boat, you couldn't see it because it was up part way up the cliff, and you couldn't see over the side of the cliff that was holding it, the water in the pool. There was this pool, and it had a shallow bit about as deep. Well, it was just about, the shallow bit was just about as deep as my arms were long. And I know I'll tell you in a minute about that. And then, so half of it was that, which had lots of interesting things going on in it, all sorts of little sea creatures and seaweeds and all different colours, all sorts of colours, reds, greens, dark colours, dark browns, light browns, all sorts of different colours, and little things, sometimes little fish swimming around, tiny baby fish swimming around. And then there was a deeper bit where, at the age I was when we used to go there, I would have been out of my depth. When we first started going there, I couldn't swim. And what I used to do, which is where the length of my arms comes in, I used to lie on my tummy with my hands on the bottom of the shallow bit, and I used to swim, sort of pretend I was swimming. So I'd be lying down with my hands down like this, and I'd be sort of walking my hands along the bottom, pretending I was swimming with my legs floating out the back. Most of my body was floating, but I was just frightened of learning to swim for various reasons. And then, of course, later on, I did learn to swim, and then I could swim in the deeper bit. That pool wasn't anywhere near as big, and it wasn't as deep as the one that Stan and David took us to. But we used to walk to that as a family, sometimes all the family, sometimes just my parents, my brother and myself, or sometimes just my parents and myself, and or my mother and myself. And we used to take picnic with us, and we used to sit there having a picnic and looking out to sea and watching what was going on in the pool, and really private and enjoying ourselves in the middle of summer when there were lots and lots of people on the beach. But we could get out of the way and be private and have a nice quiet time, enjoying being there. And that was Selwicks Bay. we'd go back, obviously. We wouldn't stay there, otherwise I wouldn't be here, would I? I'd be still there. No, we'd go back the same way and walk down the side of the road, past the old Beacon lighthouse and the golf course and one or two houses, but not as many as there are now, and back to the farm, back to the bus. That's the end of that one.